referral agencies, do feel like a faucet you can turn on for immediate lead flow, but those leads often, as we know, don't convert well. Unfortunately, the way that a lot of the aggregators work, right, is you're not the only one reaching out.
Content will remain king. Unless you ask a finance person, they'll say cash is king. But when you get cash, so what are you going to do?
It's not the volume. Do you want the phone ringing off the hook with unqualified leads, or can you get comfortable with it being a little bit quieter but higher quality?
Welcome to episode 26 of Cup of Joe. I am your host, Joe Van Kampen. Today, I'm very excited to have Jason Kohler with us, the Executive Vice President of Senior Living with BezTax Senior Living. Jason, thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Jason, I was reading an article about you just recently in Senior Housing News talking about how your organization has gone away from third-party referral organizations and bringing a little bit of that marketing stuff in-house. I'm hoping to have a good conversation about all of those things because I know that there's a lot of senior living organizations who are interested in making some movements like that. So to start everything off, why did you decide to cut off the third-party referral organizations? Like, what was the tipping point for you?
Yeah, well, the decision wasn't sudden. It was really the result of analyzing referral performance over the last probably 3 years, I guess. Referral agencies are, charge anywhere from what for our expense was $5,000 to $6,000 per move in, and in many cases, the resident may have already found us organically. We were essentially paying a finder's fee for our own lead in a lot of circumstances. And at the same time, we noticed that families arriving via referrals often had lower conversion rates. And I think many of us experienced that in the industry. So they were shopping multiple communities at once because the agency, referred them out to, your competitors as well as yourself, but not because they were specifically drawn to our brand. So it kind of made us a commodity instead of a brand choice. So that was sort of number one, and just pure numbers themselves. And I'll share a bit because I'm sure people are curious. I'm always curious about other companies' numbers. So we spent upwards of, I think 2023 was $250,000 in paid referrals. 2024 was a little bit more than that. So pretty significant. And the tipping point came when we compared that annual referral spend to the cost of building our own digital marketing infrastructure, right? Like how could we better allocate those resources? That's a lot of dollars. Could we reinvest that in SEO, paid search, social content creation, et cetera, to draw more organic leads and higher quality leads, and do it more ourselves or with our industry partners versus paying for those paid referrals. When we've been successful in doing that, which is what we're talking about today. So year to date today, we've spent significantly less than that, 250 to 280,000. We're down to 97,000 year to date, and that is almost entirely resident referrals, because we put those in the same bucket. We probably shouldn't, but we do, which we've broken those out. And also, we still work with some local referral agencies whom we have good relationships with, and they hold the hand of those families, and really they're there every step of the way, unlike the large national aggregators. So last month, I pulled the numbers. We had 15,000 in air quotes paid referrals last month, none of which were to paid referral agencies. Those were all resident referrals. So that's another thing, we kind of doubled down on resident referrals as well. So anyway, in short, we realized the money that we were pouring into agencies could instead fuel a marketing engine that drives sustainable and long-term results. So cutting ties wasn't just about saving money, though. It was really about owning our brand narrative, and taking back control of that customer journey.
I love that. Without everybody necessarily knowing all the numbers within your organization, how many communities we have, how many residents we have per community, what occupancy looks like, so forth and so on.
Yeah.
What we've been really able to accomplish with this is by cutting out the third party referral companies, you basically cut your cost down to, it sounds like about a third of what you were spending with the third party referral. Is that fair to say? In that way, it's
Yeah, it's absolutely fair to say. And we reallocated some of those dollars. So we doubled down. We added talent in-house, which has been super exciting and really beneficial. So we added a digital marketing manager to the team who's phenomenal, what she does. And then recently we just added a social media manager as well, because we're really diving deep into social media, which we'll probably touch on during our conversation today. But those are investments we were able to make just reallocating those dollars that we were spending elsewhere. And I think that if we're looking at this from a long-term perspective and controlling the brand narrative and having an exceptional customer experience like that, I think we can all agree that maybe that's the path that we should be taking. At least we believe that, versus paying for referral volume, for lead volume, right? That oftentimes is low quality lead volume, let's be honest.
yeah, absolutely. Jason, you've got kind of got the proof that's in the pudding at this point right now. But for a lot of organizations, one of their big things is not really being sure about how they're going to accomplish this goal and if this goal is actually accomplishable. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you prove that this was going to work prior to you actually initiating it? And how did you know it was going to work?
Yeah, so it was a slow process. I mean, we didn't just turn off the flow, if you will, right? I mean, we did we had to at some point, but we kind of wanted to have a little proof in the pudding before we did that, right? So, um, I think some of it was a mindset shift too. Like we shifted the conversation from, we can't afford to lose referrals to we can't afford to keep them in a way. The reality was that, referrals were not just expensive, but they were crowding out, our direct lead flows. Sales teams were spending too much time chasing low quality, price sensitive leads from agencies instead of nurturing, higher intent families who came to us directly. And so we built the financial case by calculating the cost per move in across all channels. So, referrals were averaging well over $4,000 per move in. Our own channels like organic search, paid search, social dropped to 1,500 or under within the first year. So when we started really taking a look at the numbers and the lead volume that we were able to generate organically, and adding these resources, like which we'll talk about, I'm sure, like doubling down on SEO and content and social, et cetera. And we were able to get that lead volume up from those channels. Then it was much easier, right, to turn that off, to turn off the paid referral flow. So it wasn't just we think we should do this, as the right way to go, and turn it off and then try to ramp everything up. We ramped everything up in anticipation of turning off the paid referral.
Well, that's fair. Had to spend a little bit more money in order to make it all make sense and then be able to turn that off. That's totally
Correct. So it was an initial investment. So, and that's the decision we had to make, right? Do we spend more money now in trying to prove this out that we can position ourselves to do this? Was it a gamble? I would say absolutely not. I think we did quite a bit of homework and analysis in advance and felt like it was the right thing to do and that we could be successful in this venture. And then, once we made that determination, then it was investing some money up front, exercising these ideas, putting them into action, and then seeing the fruits of that initial investment and going, oh yeah, okay, I think we're going to be good here, and building that to a point where we could turn off the paid referrals.
Jason, was that the hardest pain point for you in having that initial investment, or were there other pain points that you maybe didn't anticipate, or other things that maybe you did anticipate but proved to be maybe bigger pain points for you in this transition?
Yeah, I think, the hardest part has been the time and consistency required to build that momentum. Referral agencies, do feel like a faucet you can turn on for immediate lead flow, but those leads often, as we know, don't convert well. So, when you own your own funnel, you need to invest in building visibility, optimizing Google rankings, improving website user experience, building community level social media pages, and strengthening your online reputation. And that doesn't happen overnight. So I think that was the hardest part was, the time and consistency required to build that momentum so we could work up to turning off that flow. Um, it takes a real commitment and a commitment of dollars and resources and some patience, right? Another challenge has just been probably the alignment between marketing and sales teams. When leads come directly to your website, they tend to be better qualified, right? But they expect a faster, more personal response. And so we had to invest in training sales counselors to handle the digital inquiries with, the same urgency as a phone call or a walk-in. So it took, cultural discipline to shift the mindset from buying leads to earning trust. And so, we also doubled down on sales training and brought in sales trainers and tapped a lot of different resources from a sales training standpoint. And, that wasn't real easy either, right? That's another, um, it's another cost. It's more discipline. It's getting everyone to buy into what you're trying to do. So that was also, somewhat challenging, not quite as, not quite as challenging. I mean, every salesperson wants to be a great salesperson, be the best that they can believe. I believe that, right? It's what we all come to work for. We don't come to work to fail. So I think that but the discipline, right, of having more of a long-term perspective. We're going to invest in this over the next 12 months. In sharing that vision with everyone, getting them excited about it and kind of where we are, where we want to go. It took that was hard. It was hard. Took some real discipline, some time and effort, but it's paid off.
Um, so Jason, over the last 12 months, you making this transition with your organization, bringing the sales trainers in, having everybody kind of buy into this new model, what has the culture shift internally been like, and what are you seeing from your salespeople from your different communities?
Yeah, so I think it's a much more personalized approach. So we all know that senior living sales is relationship based. You have to build rapport, you have to build trust. It's based on relation. I think we doubled and tripled down on that. That there's no substitute for that human interaction, right? Whether it's voice to voice or face to face. Doubling down on home visits, any of that FaceTime that we could get. And that was an easy buy-in for all of our sales team members. So that's the part of the job that they really like doing is, they like talking to people. They like touring folks. They even, come to enjoy doing home visits, et cetera. But there's been no substitute for that. And I don't think that there probably ever will be, at least not during my career. Even though we created some automated nurturing funnels for marketing qualified leads and even some automated funnels for sales qualified leads to help supplement what the sales team members are doing, their buy-in on the direction we were going, they were excited about it. They didn't want to work volume. They wanted to go deeper with lower volume of leads, but higher quality. I think that it's been a blessing for them, to be quite honest with you. They're more excited that the leads that are coming in are just better quality. They make better connections with them. They get to spend more time with them. So, I often say I'll take 20 super well qualified leads each month that I can get the majority of those to tour and close a good portion to hit our goals over trying to work 100 leads, right? To find the 20 that are good quality that you can get to tour. That's not really, I don't think, how sales team members want to spend their time is, racing to follow up on a lot of unqualified leads or people that are quite frankly trying to maybe dodge your calls because they're getting bombarded by you and 10 other competitors in the market. So uh, our sales team members are all in. They're all in. They're like, yes, give me higher quality, lower volume, and let me spend more time with the prospects.
Love that. Okay, that's awesome. Let's transition from sales back to the marketing side. You talked a little bit about quality score and media spend and different things like that from a Google Ads perspective.
Yep.
Just going to call it what it is. Referral agencies dominate Google. So what have you, or I should say, how is BezTac beating them out and getting families to land on your site? What does that look like?
I would say, we focus really on, I'll say three pillars. Local SEO dominance, right? So, we treated every community like its own mini brand. Google Business Profiles were fully optimized with professional photos, virtual tours, event postings we're putting on there now, resident and family reviews. So not only it's improved, our rankings, but also boosted click-through rates. And we can appear somewhere where the paid referral agencies can't appear, and that's in the map package. I'm preaching the choir here with you and what you and your company do. The second thing I'd say content strategy. So referral sites, do often rank high because they answer families' questions, right? So as folks are trying to get answers and they're Googling for answers, if you will, the lead aggregators, they really provide a lot of answers for folks. And so we built out our own content around questions that families actually search for, like what does assisted living cost in Naples? What activities do seniors do in Ann Arbor? How do I know if my parents need assisted living, et cetera? So by publishing pages, blogs, and guides that directly address those queries, we became the trusted source, not the directory. And that was super, super helpful. And number three, I'd say, is paid search with more of a surgical precision, if you will. So instead of broad senior living keywords where agencies certainly dominate, we targeted hyper-local and brand-specific queries like luxury senior living in West Bloomfield. So that allowed us to intercept high intent families and prospects who were actively looking for us in particular, right? Which leads to higher quality leads. So I would say I would probably add that, social media, amplified all of this. So we're getting ready to run a lot more social media ads, targeted Facebook and Instagram campaigns with resident stories, which is exciting. We'll see how that does for us. But we've been doing a lot of event recaps and video testimonials and just to increase brand familiarity. So when families saw us, they find us in Google results, they already feel a connection, right? Or there's other places that they can see and go to that help reinforce who we are, what we're all about, and perhaps why you should entertain us as your next place to live.
So, I know we've had a little bit of a conversation. I'm gonna hit on your point about AI and kind of the way that everything is going really quick. We had a little bit of conversation around search engine optimization and specific questions that might be asked on the search engine results or in the search query, I should say, that might populate you as the authority on that specific subject. Tell me a little bit about that and what BezTac is doing from an AI perspective to support bringing some new movements to the communities.
Yeah, so on that front, yeah, I think it goes back to content. If AI is reviewing your website and you're doing FAQ, AI is trying to answer the question, right? So Google search is senior living near me or something like that, right? Very specific long tail like queries, people are certainly using AI for that. And so they're looking for the answer, the immediate answer. And so the way that we've taken, and Joe, you're I'm sure more of an expert in this than I certainly am, but the way that our approach has been with AI search is to answer those questions. So it kind of goes back to content. If we're doing FAQs and we're answering questions, we're providing resources that's posing those questions, and we've got really good, strong answers to them, and AI has access to that. That's how we're showing up there in the AI search results.
I
That's
love
still a work in progress. I think it always will be, and AI, as you know, is changing by the minute. So we're continuing to keep a very close eye on that and figuring out how we might need to adjust our tactics and approach. But that's one that we're currently using with some success right now.
I love that, Jason. I feel like Google's been prepping us for AI long before we knew AI was even coming. You know, you go back
Right?
to 2018 with the medic update or 2022 with the helpful content update, things like that. It's been prepping us and saying, hey, your content needs to be medically accurate. You need to answer the questions that people are posing out there and all of that. And now, those of us, yourself included, myself, who have been working within these major algorithmic updates over the last years, are still winning by just having the best content out there. And content, 100%, I completely agree with you. Content will remain king.
Yes.
Unless you ask a finance person, they'll say cash is king. But you know, when you get cash, so what are you going to do? Um, okay, that's very very cool. Let's jump into some traditional tactics, like direct mail, print, community partnerships. How are those playing a role in your strategy, or is this all digital muscle?
Yeah, so they are still playing a role. So I think while digital's the backbone, traditional tactics still do matter, but only when used strategically. Like for example, direct mail to age, income, asset qualified, affluent households within a certain radius of our communities still performs when especially when like paired with the digital follow up, right? So families might see a mailer and then Google us. Then they see a retargeting ad. That multi-touch approach builds trust, and that's still working. It's still a tactic that we deploy. In fact, it's one that we've gone back to recently. Old school direct mail. It's kind of surprising. Well, for me anyway, it's very surprising what information is out there on each household when it comes to just hobbies, interests, demographics, net worth, all of that information is out there. And you can get very targeted now with direct mail. So again, when combining that with some digital follow-up, we find success there. Community partnerships, are also huge. We partner with local universities, art museums, wellness organizations, et cetera, to host events in our community. We like it when we can get them to come to us. Obviously, it's a little bit more valuable. Just more foot traffic in the door. And these partnerships, create organic PR opportunities and generate generally high quality leads that no aggregator could deliver. Now, is the lead volume as high? No, but it's very high quality. And it's good. It's good from a community standpoint. You want to be part of a larger community. It's a good feel. So that works well for us, and we still do a lot of that. Print advertising, on the other hand, has diminished in ROI. Quite significantly, to be honest. Still has a role a little bit like in credibility building or brand awareness, perhaps. Like yeah, if you do, for us, we have upscale luxury communities, mostly independent living, some assisted living and memory care. So, we have to get real specific when we think about print and very as targeted as we can be. But it's still more of like a credibility or brand awareness. So we'll do something every now and then, like in a luxury lifestyle magazine. But we treat it more like it's brand reinforcement and not lead generation when it comes to print.
I completely agree with that. When we take a look at, the two major marketing buckets with, lead generation and branding tactics, I generally consider print to kind of land in the same world as, billboards and different things like that, where it's
Right.
like, you know what, it's about getting in front of people when they're not actively looking for you, unless you're talking like the old school yellow pages. Nobody opens a yellow pages book unless they're looking for somebody directly, right? Um, but digital tactics, and when I say digital tactics, I should specifically say like search, Google Ads, SEO, all of that. They're coming online to search for you directly. They're generally a more qualified lead coming through for sure.
Right. Now, we'll deploy a few more of those, I'll say old school tactics, perhaps, like in a new development. So we'll have new community coming out of the ground soon in Florida, and we'll still use some of those tactics that just to build brand awareness and start to build credibility. But we'll still be using those to drive them to our digital assets. Expectations have to be set, like from a leadership standpoint on what the ROI looks like on that. You do have to run your numbers. I mean, the response rate or conversion rate is going to be X, but if you benchmark that, if you use benchmarks for it, I should say more industry benchmarks, and your expectations are set properly. I think that it's still a worthy tactic, especially when done right. 'Cause we just prove out the numbers, right? So if we spend X dollars, and we can track people through the sales process, and then you can determine what the ROI is on those direct mail pieces that you're doing, and we're still finding that it's paying dividends, and so it's a piece of our game.
Yes. So I know that you ramped up your marketing spend before you cut down the third party referrals. So if you can't answer this question, totally respect it. But in case you have insights, I want to at least pose the question to you. A lot of operators worry that their phones are going to go quiet if they cut referrals. Um, did BestTac see a dip? Is there anything that you would say you should anticipate from that?
Yeah, I would say that's a real concern, and our experience is that it will happen. So you kind of I think just knowing that going into making the change, um, be prepared for it, but also understand that that's going to happen. So we did see like a short-term dip, about 3 months where the phones were quieter as organic channels continued to scale. But here's the critical piece, I would say, is that the quality of leads improved dramatically. And that's what I'm more concerned with. And I would argue that people should be more concerned with. It's not the volume. Do you want the phone ringing off the hook with unqualified leads that you're sharing with a lot of other folks and you're paying a third party for? Or can you get comfortable with it being a little bit quieter but higher quality? And I maintain if you've got results, right, and you're hitting your numbers, then back to the earlier conversation or question about what salespeople would rather spend their time doing. I think it's easy to say, I'll take fewer higher quality, right? Um, so instead of sales team members juggling 50 agency referrals to find one move in, they're now working 10 direct inquiries, right, to land three move-ins. So phones just they got a little quieter. Emails got a little quieter. Lead flow going directly into the CRM, did get a little quieter. But we knew that, and we prepared everyone for that. And so the flip side, of course, is our communities began experiencing, higher tour to move-in ratios, which is always welcome, because families who, contacted us directly were already aligned with our lifestyle and our pricing and our location. So within, I'd say, 3, 4, 5 months or so, we were filling the pipeline, I would say faster than before, and doing it more profitably. Certainly.
Jason, I love what you just said. So, and it actually comes back to the same type of conversation we're having when it comes to AI. The reality is that with these people who are doing these searches online, them getting their answers because, BezTac, as an example, is the most qualified person to answer that, and having that on the search engine results page means that they are going to probably have less traffic through to the website, in which term, having less traffic through to the website, the traffic that comes through to the website is going to be more qualified. And those people who actually convert from the website are going to be more qualified, which also increases your tour to move in ratio. And it goes back to the same conversation with this removal of the third party referral. It's like, we don't care if the phone rings 100 times if nobody who's calling is qualified. We care
Got that right.
one metric, move-ins. What's the
Move-ins.
metric? Move-ins, right? And then after that, it's like, how do you get them?
Move-ins and cost per move-in. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah, if and this isn't a brag. I'm proud, and I haven't hesitated to share our numbers. I mean, we're sitting right now across the portfolio at 90, a little over 94% occupancy across the portfolio. Um, and our lead volume is down, Joe. I'm okay with it. I don't
That
care about
quality
that.
lead is
I don't
higher.
care about that. I care about the move-ins, the occupancy, and the cost per move-in.
Yeah. And you threw some numbers out earlier about your cost per movement, and that is a great, cost per movement. I think you mentioned, and I don't mean to quote you, but $1,500 to $2,000 compared to 100% of the first month's rent in some cases, or $4,000 or $5,000 cost per movement, what you're getting from third party referral.
Right.
Anybody will take that any day of the week as long as those movements are continuously continuing to come.
Right.
It's so funny. My next question is, how do you measure success, and what's that one single KPI? I think we just kind of chatted about that. That single KPI is movements and cost per movement. Is there anything
Yes.
we can add to that though, Chase?
I'd say our that's it. So, if I had to pick three, right, our top, we track, by the way, we track about 16 KPIs across for sales. Our primary one is occupancy, and then we've got cost per move-in and lead volume, and cost per move-in, this metric rolls up all channels, tells us exactly like how efficient our marketing engine is compared to referrals and stuff. And we look at ROI, we look at, the cost on the different channels too. So we're monitoring all of that. But if you want to use just one flat number, it's, cost per move in on that, right? I mentioned we also closely monitor occupancy trends. Of course, everyone does that. I would say another one is, the lead to move in conversion rates. The sales performance ratios are still very, very important because you want to know, you know, you want to be able to identify opportunities from a sales performance standpoint. So lead to tour to move in are still very important to us. But I would say occupancy is the North Star, and followed by cost per move in. So yeah, so I would say that those are, how we're measuring success. What's fun though is we created a contest for our KPIs. And so I mentioned that we have about 16 sales KPIs, and we put those out to all of our team members every month and run contests on that. And it's a lot of fun. We give out an award each month, and it's never surprises me how competitive our sales team members are. I'm a competitive person as well, and I just love seeing the competition, and everyone's striving for success and hitting all their KPIs. And I think sharing that across the portfolio with all the team members has been really good for us. I think it's driven performance. If no one wants to be number 18 on a 20 slot list, right? So, that's been fun, and to share all of that and see successes and celebrate that, and then people can clearly see too where there might be opportunities. So I just share that also. I think that my career, people have been, there's been people who have been hesitant to share some of that information across a broader audience. But I think it's been really beneficial for us, and not just the competition, but then the camaraderie too that's come out of that, of celebrating one another and helping others where there might be opportunities with ideas, or even physical support of sales team members going over to another community and lending a hand with past due activities or whatever. So that's been really cool.
I remember early in my career, it was referred to as a ranking report with
Uh,
all the salespeople, and basically talked about like what percent are you to target, what's your cancellation rate, so forth and so on. Different metrics than obviously you would take a look at, but all of these, what it really allowed me to do is say, okay, these are the guys that are performing really, really well, and start listening to their calls or joining them on client meetings and different things like that, to hear what I could be doing differently. And it helped me from a training perspective. And it got me to a point where then all of a sudden people were asking me, like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I think that, it's a good culture builder. And those individuals who are a part of the organization who are kind of like maybe lower on that and not asking, realize pretty quick they may not be the right fit for that role. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
right in the right seat.
Yeah.
Um,
Very true.
I personally love a good gamification and having a little bit of competition in the role. Some people are motivated by recognition. Some people are motivated by cash or whatever else.
Sure. Sure.
Gamification is always a good thing.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Well, if you can hit, you're right. People are motivated by different things, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple that people are really motivated. Sometimes it's just a list and being competitive and wanting to be at the top of the list. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it is recognition. We do try to hit on all fronts, not to dive too deeply into, culture, or personnel, but we do try to touch on all of those, to where we're we've got awards and recognition. We just had our annual event where we, recognize top performers, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. If you haven't, check out my LinkedIn and some of the postings from some of our teams at our annual event. We had a music rock and roll. Well, I wouldn't say rock and roll. It was a music themed event downtown Detroit, where we handed out a whole bunch of awards and pulled everyone together. It was so much fun. So, we'll do some of that. Money does motivate people, especially a lot of salespeople are motivated by money. And so, we don't mind juicing up some incentives either, where we see, opportunity or competition brewing. So yeah, we try to hit on all those fronts. It's a lot of fun. We have fun.
I love that. Uh, Jason, earlier in one of your answers, you had talked about um, families when they come in from a third party referral inquiry. And you kind of said like they seem less engaged. Is that fair to say? Is that
I think so. You know, Unfortunately, the way that a lot of the aggregators work, right, is you're not the only one reaching out. Right? And that when that lead comes in from a paid referral source, there's other communities that are, getting that lead as well. And so I think that, you know, um, creates a can create a little bit of either friction or overwhelm or avoidance, et cetera. I think overwhelm is probably the right word, um, but I think, in those experiences of talking to actually making contact, first of all, and having a conversation, with those leads, I think what most surprised us was how much the families value transparency. Agencies often push families to communities based on, commissions or who is contracted with them and so and not fit. There's some of the very, very large paid aggregators that have, pulled team from out of the field, right? More have centralized where they had reps in the field in the past, and those reps would come by your communities. And so they would get to know your sales director or your executive director or your some of your team members, and they physically visited the community. They can speak to it firsthand, and I find that that's not so much the case any longer, which is why we still do work with some select local
cool?
agencies. But that's kind of that personal touch has kind of gone by the wayside, and I think that families value that as well. So once we took over the funnel, we could show you talking about transparency and authenticity, like we would show authentic photos, the floor plans, the dining menus, the pricing guidance in genuine resident testimonials. So families told us that they appreciated being able to learn, about our communities without being it felt like they were being sold to, right? We
Well, no,
certainly take more of a low pressure sales approach with a lot of transparency, and I think that that's one of the big differences in what families have enjoyed. So,
yeah, I think that that's the reality in any buying decision. Like people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. You're giving them
oh
an
yeah,
opportunity to say,
perfectly said.
yeah, this is an opportunity for me to actually buy into the community and get excited about it.
Yeah, and I think if that lead is going out to multiple competitive communities, you've got to feel from the consumer standpoint that you're being sold to, right? To your point, people like to buy, they like to buy, they don't like to be sold to. And I think that, you know, moving away from that has flipped that to where, we're building real relationships with a lot of authenticity, a lot of transparency, a lot of trust is being built there. And that's what people want. I mean, you're kind of making a decision, perhaps, as one of the last places you're going to move to. That's a huge decision, and I don't think anyone wants to feel like they're being sold to in that situation. I'd say too, another surprise was the role of social media as social proof. Too, families often check Facebook and Instagram after visiting our site, so seeing those authentic posts, residents at happy hour, family nights, wellness classes, just reassured them that life in our communities matched what they saw online. So I don't want to. I kind of want to play up the importance of social media too, because it's something that we're diving deeper into, as I mentioned earlier, that I think others should as well. And I'd say too, that's where our online reputation, management also became critical. When you talk about transparency and giving people a feel what it's really like to live there. So we prioritize too the review generation, and turning happy families into advocates. And the volume and quality of our Google reviews help make us, I think, stand out both in rankings and credibility.
So Jason, you've obviously got a lot of foundation that you kind of moved into this plan with. Um, if another operator said to you today, "We'd love to ditch referrals, but we're scared," what's that one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say don't rip the band-aid off overnight. Test and prove it, first. So go into it by doing your analysis, right? Define your strategy, start putting that into action, hone it, fine tune it, improve upon it, start seeing the movement, and do all of that before you actually make the switch. But I say you can make the switch. So I'd start with one community perhaps, or that might be my suggestion. Start with one and try to reduce that referral reliance, and reinvest that budget, into SEO, PPC, social media campaigns. Track your cost per move in, track your tour to move in ratios, watch your occupancy trends. I know we all do, but it goes without, maybe it goes out saying. And then, within 6 months or so, you'll see that your owned leads I maintain what you'll find is your owned leads are stronger, right? And then they're less expensive and they're more loyal, and you'll likely have better conversion rates. But the fear is real. I've talked to people in the industry about this subject, and there's some fear out there. And I'd say, but the data doesn't lie, so um, where there's hesitation, just, run the numbers, have the plan, and just move into it a little bit more slowly. But I think once you experience the freedom of owning your funnel, and the brand equity that it builds, long term, you'll never want to go back.
I love that. Uh, Jason, thank you so much for joining the show today. It's been absolutely amazing having you. Um,
It's been amazing being here, Joe. I always enjoy our conversations.
it's always fun. Jason, I'm going to put it to you. If people want to ask you questions, what's the best way for them to do that? Is that something that, are you maybe LinkedIn you mentioned? Is that something that you'd have them reach out to you there?
Yeah, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think that's the best way to grab me. We all get too much email, so I won't say email me. I'll say message me on LinkedIn. It definitely will get my attention, and I love talking to people about senior living, period, senior living marketing and sales, obviously a passion of mine. And love to network. So if anyone would like to reach out, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. Thank you again, Jason. It's been absolutely amazing having you on the show. For those of you who would like to reach out to me for any reason, you can go to citizen55.com and book through there, or you can email me directly, joe@citizen55.com. Thank you so much for watching the show, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.